I'd like to call this morning's meeting of the Orange County Transportation Council Planning Committee to order. I'll start with introductions. Alan Sorensen, proxy here for County Executive Steve Newman.
Jacob Tawil, City of Middletown.
Chad Wade, City of Newburgh.
Jim Farr, City of Port Jervis.
Gary Spears, Town of Deer Park.
Dan McCann, Town of Crawford, representing Supervisor Carnes.
Sandra Johnson with New York State Department of Transportation, and Nicole Farmer is also on.
Lauren Bennett, OCTC staff.
Jessica Ridgway, OCTC staff.
And on the line, we have Mike Beatty, who is with AKRF, Nicole Farmer. We have Ryan McGuire with Orange County DPW, Zach Coleman, who's also OCTC staff, Dave Lake, who is Mid-Hudson South TCC staff, and then Harry Lewis with NISDOT main office. All right.
Okay, with that, I'd like to provide an opportunity for public comment. Are there any members from the public who are either online, who would like to speak? Hearing none, I'll close the public comment period. Next item on the agenda is to accept the meeting transcript of July 27th, 2022. Those have been distributed to the members. Are there any comments, recommended revisions to the meeting transcript?
Motion to approve. Accept.
So I have a motion from Gary, a
Second.
Jacob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting transcript is approved. Okay, next we're going to talk about the Transportation Improvement Program, specifically Orange County Transportation Council Administrative Modification 20Y. And I'm going to ask Lauren Bennett to lead that discussion.
Yeah, I just want to add on record that Al Fesco joined us online.
Oh, very good. Welcome, Al.
Oh, he's muted.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
So administrative modification OCTC 20Y is two City of Newburgh projects. Pin 800526 is the Broadway pedestrian and traffic signal improvements. Then pin 875875 is traffic signal upgrades in the same area. So this is a administrative action to move construction from this current fiscal year to 2024. If you remember, the council approved some additional funds for both these projects in 2024. So they're just moving the construction into the years. This is going on this current tip because of, it will help improve the amended STIP performance. So that's why we're doing it now in an administrative
Is
modification.
it both projects? It's actually one project or two?
It's two projects. Currently two
Under
pins.
110, right?
No, they're two pins.
2 pens?
Yep.
Oh, I see the following page.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any questions or?
Anything to add, Chad?
No, we're through design, but because of the additional funds, we need to just push it up.
Okay, so is there consensus to move forward? We're going to go on to old business. And I'm going to ask Lauren to lead discussion on the draft 2023. If I didn't miss anything.
We just have the local project sponsor updates.
Oh,
I know you want to
yes.
give the Scudamonk update.
So, yeah, with the local project sponsor updates, with the Scudamonk Trail, we've been working diligently with FTA to formally submit the application. That will be done by the end of this week. Our initial application will be solely for the detailed design reports. And then we're looking at construction going into 2023, probably 2024. I'm usually overly optimistic. But the good news is that process is moving forward, and we're excited to get that process underway. So we'll be working to get an RFP out over in the coming months for the detailed design, and then hopefully at some point, maybe in the fall of next year, but probably spring of 2024, get out for bid for construction. So just a snapshot for anyone who doesn't know, this is the rail trail that goes from Gray Court in Chester up to the just below, underneath the trestle, near Salisbury Mills. So it's 10 miles in length, and it's going to be a really important addition to our bicycle network throughout the county.
Does that connect to the Heritage Trail in Chester or?
It does, yeah,
Okay, great.
Camp LaGuardia.
Awesome.
So it's going to be an extensive bike system that we're starting to develop, and of course we want to expand it further. So we'll talk about that in coming meetings. Okay, now are there any other local project sponsor updates? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move on to old business. Lauren, if you'll lead the discussion on the draft 2023-2027 TIP development.
Yeah, so we have our draft tip. We will be introducing the tip update to the public at our next planning committee meeting, which is scheduled for Wednesday, September 7th at 10 a.m. So we'll be in this room. The only administrative thing, we're gonna send out the tip strips to project sponsors just to review any minor administrative details. So no changes, but just looking for minor things. But we are looking to move that along at the next meeting, so very exciting. Thank all the members for their participation in that. And then the public comment will start that Thursday, September 8th, and we'll look to adopt at that October 11th meeting. So we're on schedule.
That's very good work. It's been an interesting year too, different, unique process. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So next item under old business is the fiscal year 2021-22 FTA 5339 allocations. And I'll just briefly say we discussed this at the last meeting. We had gone back to DOT to ask if they could reassess the formula that they were utilizing. And they did accommodate our request, which leads to, I would characterize it as a more equitable distribution of funding throughout the TMA.
Good. Who did you end up, I don't think I was part of that. Who did you end up working with on that?
It was, oh my goodness.
Was it Tom Block?
You're not gonna ruin it on us, are you? Don't do it.
It was someone from the team.
No,
We
I
went from the lowest to the highest.
That's right.
It
Good job,
was-
Alan.
Oh, it was a team effort.
Well, good job, team.
It could have been Mike. It wasn't Tom Vaughn?
No, it was, oh, that's,
I have it.
I'm having a senior moment on that.
Alan, I'll take a look also. It was someone from Tom Vaughn's office, but it wasn't Tom.
Okay, that's
Right,
good
right.
enough.
Yeah.
Laura Hacker.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And so they recalculated and redistributed to everybody.
Yes, and there's was consensus amongst the three members of the TMA. So,
It was the definition of fleet size.
Okay.
So it was, I guess when it moved to, it used to be Mark Brochure, and he left, so,
he had left some notes, the
Yeah.
person picking it up,
Oh, good.
utilized.
Okay.
So they were very accommodating to us. What it does in fiscal year 2021, under the old formula, it showed us as having 15 buses, so there would have been an allocation of 588,000. Now it's showing us, because we're using the total buses, 57 buses, and the allocation for Orange County at 752,879, and that's for the fiscal year 21 allocation. So they're much more in line.
Based on what you had said at the last meeting, there was such like a change. You had said there was, I did wonder if there was an error in the calculation or, which wasn't really an error, but it sounds like they're approach to the formula.
Yeah, they were just using only the urban area, and so that really affected us. But now I think it benefits Ulster as well. And there, I reached out to Mark the phone. Yeah, yeah.
Good job.
So we will bring this to the next policy board meeting for adoption. These distribution.
Yeah, so I just want to, also, I do want to thank Dutchess County for working with us on that. Okay, then we have new business. I'm going to ask Lauren to cover the PM3 traffic congestion performance measures for Poughkeepsie Newburgh urbanized area.
Yes, so if you can remember, we need to adopt some performance measures for safety, reliability. So this is actually, the traffic congestion measures are new measures for this performance period. So there are two measures for traffic congestion: the annual hours of peak excessive delay per capita, or the Fed measure, and the percent non-single occupancy vehicle, or non-SOV measure. So we're required to establish these targets for traffic congestion measures for the Poughkeepsie Newburgh urbanized area. And then there's one related to on-road mobile source emissions, which we will support NIST's targets when we get those. So we want to go to the next slide. So the performance period measures January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2025. The MPOs and state DOTs must adopt the performance measures by October 1st, 2022. So OCTC, the previous performance period, it was urbanized areas that were in air quality non-attainment or maintenance areas with a population of over 1 million. For this new performance period, it's urban areas with a population over 200,000. So that is why Orange County with the maintenance area for PM 2.5 and within the Poughkeepsie Newburgh UCA, which has a population of over 200,000, we're being now required to adopt these performance measures. And we are the only MPO adopting these for the entire urbanized area. So we did coordinate with NISDOT and the 3 MPOs that have touched the boundary of the urbanized area, which is Northern Jersey Transportation Planning Area, NJTPA. I think that's the correct acronym. Ulster County Transportation Council and Dutchess County Transportation Council. So we met and we talked about the approach and the draft, and they supported and felt comfortable with what we're presenting today. So the baseline is the 2021, and then we have 2-year targets for 2023 and 4-year targets for the end of 2025. So the first shows the trends from 2010 to 2020 for the percent non-SOV travel. For this, we use the American Community Survey 5-year estimates. So you can see this is all the non-SOV. It includes carpooling, public transportation, walking, other means, which includes, I believe, bicycling and motorcycles, and then work from home. And so 2020 obviously had a big impact on a lot of trends with travel. So you can see that the work from home increased. So we see that bump to the 26.3% in 2020. It's hard to predict what will happen now with such a big shift in the work from home policies and travel policies. So we've decided to stay at the same level as 2020 for the 2023. So our target is 26.3% for the 2-year target, and a slight increase to 26.5% in the 2025. And then the next measure is the peak hour excessive delay per capita measure. And for this, we use the Avail Labs tool that uses NPM RDS data. I cannot remember what that stands for. And then the volumes from the HPMS, vehicle occupancy from the American Community Survey, and then population is also from the 5-year American Community Survey. So for this, we have, you can see a big dip in the 2020 dropping down to 4.2. For 2021, the person hour of excessive delay data was available, but the population was not. So we're estimating using the 2020 just to see where the trend line was going. And we do see it increasing again. So for the 2023 measure, we felt most comfortable with adopting the 2019 levels. So that's the 6.6, and then in 2025, a slight decrease to 6.5. So the next slide just shows the performance targets that we will be adopting. There is no ramifications, unlike a lot of the other performance measures, if we do not hit these targets. So we don't need to adopt anything, we don't need to do anything if we do not meet these traffic congestion targets. But we do think they set a good goal overall. And we can also reassess the 4-year target at the mid-performance period in 2 years. So we ask that the OCTC take action on these targets at the next policy board meeting, which is September 7th, and therefore it will be adopted with it before the October 1st deadline. Is there anything?
I just add that, Lauren's done a really good job coordinating this effort. We feel very comfortable with the, with the estimates that we have. Yeah, any other comments or questions? Very good.
So we know who to blame if we don't.
Who to congratulate if we do.
Exactly. Alan, we identify the person.
If there's any blame, I'll share it. I won't be throwing anyone under the bus. Reports. So we have the staff reports. I'm going to turn over the save the date to Lauren.
Yeah, so as we mentioned, we'll be asking the council to take action on the performance measures. So we will need to have a policy board meeting. We'll also be introducing the transportation improvement program, or the TIP update at a public meeting. So it will be a back-to-back planning and policy board meeting on Wednesday, September 7th, starting at 10 a.m. It will be in this room. So we will require in-person quorum. I know some people are on vacation, so you can send a proxy. We just need a proxy letter before the meeting. If you have any questions, please reach out to OCTC staff.
Very good. Any questions? Okay. Next, I'm going to ask Zach Coleman to lead the discussion on the Central Business District tolling program, which I believe is also referred to as congestion pricing. So Zach's online.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. So last week, I believe we attended just an informational meeting. So the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority put it on. It's an affiliate of the MTA, and they just wanted to give us an update. The environmental assessment is available for public comment starting tomorrow. So I shared that link in the chat. Basically, it's everything south of 60th Street except for FDR Drive and the West Side Highway is susceptible to this congestion management pricing. So that's pretty much the update that we got. They're looking for public comments. The period starts tomorrow and it closes September 9th. So the link to the EA will be available at that link that I just shared. So.
Yeah, and I think we're going to send out an email through the OCTC mailbox just as a reminder if anyone's interested in reading through the EIS and making public comment.
Zach, thank you.
No problem.
Next, I'm going to ask Jessica Ridgway to join us at the table to discuss the bill funding opportunity. And I'll turn it over to Jessica.
It's quite an acronym. Last month, FHWA announced the availability of about $7.3 billion over the next 5 years to states through the new Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation, otherwise known as PROTECT acronym formula program. This is a 5-year program. The funding amount for New York is 293 million. The purpose of this is to make transportation infrastructure, including highway and transit projects, bikehead projects, and port facilities more resilient to future weather events and other natural disasters. And under this, and this is what we wanted to highlight to OCTC, states and MPOs are encouraged to develop a resilience improvement plan. And we think that we could address the criteria that are required in this plan through our ongoing countywide resilience plan. So we're currently reviewing the criteria and seeing if we could work it in to our ongoing resilience plan. But what having these targets met will do is it reduces the non-federal match for certain projects by 7%. And then if the state also has a resilience improvement plan or adopted into their the MTP, it will reduce it by an additional 3%. So we have the opportunity to reduce our non-federal match by 10% through this program. So we're looking into it and we'll keep OCTC updated as we move forward.
Jessica, thank you. So next I want to suggest, I'm going to introduce Mike before I ask Mike to speak. I'm just going to provide kind of a brief summary of the West Central Transportation Study. The West Central Transportation Land Use Connection Study is a continuing cooperative planning effort looking at OCTC Western Gateway region. Study analyzes several corridors as determined by an analysis of traffic flows, traffic congestion, transit, and land uses within the study area. Potential impacts on transportation, transit, land use were examined based on existing policies and programs, as well as historical trends. This study also included an assessment of existing active transportation system and developed improvement recommendations. As part of the study, the bus service provided in and around the city of Middletown and town of Walco was examined to determine how improvements can be made. Both historical bus routes and scheduling were studied, as well as future transit needs in the area. The study kicked off in the summer of 2019. They held 4 study advisory group meetings, and due to COVID, used the virtual public involvement tools such as public videos and surveys to incorporate public input into the study. For this meeting, we're going to share some of the recommendations. And I'm going to ask Mike to provide an overview of some of the key findings and recommendations coming out of the West Central Transportation and Land Use Study. Before Mike speaks, I just want to thank the SAG members and staff, as well as the consultant team, for their hard work on this study. Look forward to concluding the study and implementing recommendations through the transportation planning process. So with that, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Alan. Let me share my screen. Let me know when everyone sees it. Good?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Shown shared. How about now?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. Thanks for the introduction. We actually have quite a few recommendations, so I've tried to group them up the best we can, and depending on time, we can always go back. Like Alan said, this was really to look at improving the transportation network in the mid and western areas of Orange County. There were 3 components that we've talked about in the past. There was the active transportation component, which was looking at countywide non-vehicular connectivity. And for that study, when we go through it, we have our study area shown at the right. For the active transportation, we actually looked at kind of Orange County as a whole, since then it makes sense just to kind of stop a countywide connectivity right at this border. We did some corridor analysis, have some recommendations on both specific corridors, but also corridors in general that any place could kind of look at and have a toolbox to implement. And then we had a transit study that really utilized location-based services data to figure out what was going on today in terms of where the ridership was, where the gaps were. And a lot of those recommendations had some specific things that could be done, but also was leading into future studies that should be conducted. So I'll start with the countywide active transportation recommendations. The first kind of large one was really developing this countywide network where you could traverse the county east, west, north, south without getting into a car. And the way we did that was looking at the existing infrastructure and then abandoned railways to create this network. And if you look at the map, you have the Heritage Trail in red, you have the Walden Wallkill Trail, but you have all these other abandoned railways that, as you look at them, start piecing together this east-west, north-south network that a lot of them tie into a very accessible heritage trail. One I'll point out, this was just discussed, here's the Scudamounk Trail. You can see how it connects into the Heritage Trail. And so what we did was we looked at these railways and based on population centers, transit centers, locations to schools, the ownership of the parcels, we developed a kind of a phasing plan. You could take these railways and start developing a larger network. So while you have your existing trails, and then you can see some heritage trail plan extensions and Scudamounk Trail, the next phase would be these trails in green. This one going from Unionville up through Slit Hill into Middletown. This one from Florida, Hamptonburg, that start capturing one population that's using the Heritage Trail to then go north-south, but also there's transit centers along these corridors that really could start to use it, to really start the population using this as both a recreational route and commuter route. And then as you go further along, the next set of phases would be ones that are further to the north, where it's a little more difficult to connect to the Heritage Trail. You'll see in our report, for instance, Trailway 6, they'd have to go through possibly, the Stewart State Park and connect with some roadways to get down to Trailway 8. So our report details each of these phases. But with that, we talk about having coordination among the agencies that as a railway looks to maybe sell off the right of way, or if some of these railways are owned by private properties being tracked, these are opportunities where we really need to keep these in the public domain in order to create this countywide network. We want to start developing almost a handbook of trail conversion standards. Therefore, you have a cohesive, consistent network throughout the county. Implementing at-grade trail crossings. There's a lot of trails here and railways that cross at grade. Particularly there's one on Slate Hill Road to make sure that you have safe crosses across these busy roadways. And then developing a consistent wayfinding signage. So as you traverse this network, making sure there's trailhead signage, directional signage, all that feeds into a very successful network. In addition to the kind of the larger countywide network, we also want to start looking at ways to enhance the existing heritage trail. This can be, as you get closer to trails, right-sizing roadways, repurposing abandoned rail beds, identifying low volume roadways and improving wayfinding. And a good example of that is actually in Goshen. You see the image, you have the heritage trail that goes through the downtown core and on. And what you have here is within a 2-mile radius of the heritage trail, you have schools, you have government centers, you have existing and future planned residential networks. And so there needs to be a way to connect the heritage trail to these different elements. So the heritage trail becomes both a recreational route and a commuter route. And so as you look at these areas within a 2-mile of a trail access point, you start looking for, like I said, are there ways to right-size roadways? So Main Street today, there's angled parking, but it's still a very wide roadway. So possibly there's ways to implementing bike lanes or bike facilities along that stretch. You have abandoned rail beds where if you could get to the rail bed, you have a place where you can now be off street for walking and biking. Low volume roadways, less than 400 cars, great place to send bicycles where you don't need a lot of infrastructure improvements, but they could have bicycles come to those roadways since there's low traffic volumes. And then wayfinding to know once you get to these access points, how do you get to the government center or to a school or to residential neighborhoods or vice versa? If you're at the government center, how do you safely get to the heritage trail? And then you have more general policy recommendations, really working to adopt policies that promote pedestrian and bicycle amenities. So for instance, as new developments come online, are you promoting or giving credits to developments having bike parking, showers, travel demand credits to really reduce vehicular demand and allow people to bike and walk to work. And then even just streamlining processes to install a bike rack in front of someone's storefront, making a very simple process that the quicker you get these bike racks out there, people will bike to work and park at work. Next up, we're going to talk about some of the corridors. We did specific looks at the Route 17M corridor in Middletown, Route 211 in Wallkill, Route 94 in Chester, and then two intersections, the Route 17M Brookside in Chester, and Route 94 Main Street in Warwick. In general, whether you're on these corridors or other corridors throughout the county, there are recommendations we have that really kind of can travel anywhere. One is really encouraging places to adopt a complete street policy. This is important. One, there's funding opportunities when you have a policy in place. Two, it kind of sets the standard that as future projects or developments are coming online, there's an emphasis on making sure that they contribute to the complete street network within their city, town, or village. And within the report, Orange County actually has a really nice model write-up. So this is not something you'd have to do from scratch. There's actually a model policy that they put together. So if of any interest, you can reach out to OC staff and they can actually help you set up that policy. There's general traffic improvements that you can make along corridors. A big one is access management. A lot of the corridors we studied have multiple driveways in close proximity that causes a lot of friction as drivers are traveling on the corridor. And so there's ways of managing that access. One is you can see in the images to the right, creating more, instead of full access driveways, right in, right out driveways with secondary driveways to complete your left turns, or even trying to get shared access. So you don't have someone taking a left turn on 5 driveways that are close to each other that you know where the person taking the left versus one centralized driveway. Important to maintain infrastructure, striping that's faded, roadways that are in bad condition, definitely have a negative effect on traffic operations. Opportunities to obviously increase roadway capacity, adding lanes helps traffic operations. And then locations where you can't add capacity, looking at technology to handle those fluctuations in traffic. A big one is adaptive traffic control systems, which have been really successful in corridors that have varied land uses, that have peaking, that really can't have the space to widen the roadway. Those sort of technologies exist and they're very successful and can be implemented in some of these corridors. And then within the report, you'll see traffic calming strategies, whether it's the vertical deflection measures or horizontal measures, and ped and bike safety measures. Again, it's all in the report that you could pull from in a toolbox that you could implement on corridors throughout the county. Just a couple of specifics. Route 17M and Dawson Avenue, we've highlighted where our study area was for Dawson Avenue. This was interesting because actually right now there's a lot of work going on. Dawson Avenue, they have a traffic operations improvement project. They have some sidewalk projects. So for this one, really looked at where we could improve or build upon what's being done right now. So one is along that corridor, really encouraging as new development comes online, shared driveway access. Again, reduce the number of driveways and friction along the corridor. While there are projects right now to build sidewalks on the corridor, there are still gaps that remain. A couple of them that we've noted was on Academy Avenue between Grant Street and Benton Avenue, and Academy Avenue between Benton right up to East Main Street. You can see in the images where there's a lack of sidewalks. And also there's a stretch between Dawson Town and Campbell Plaza where there are no sidewalks. And then a big one with this corridor is maintaining and updating pavement markings. A great example is you'll see some images from a couple years ago where a right turn had a through lane, a through arrow, a right arrow, a through arrow, which could cause confusion for the driver. These have been updated, again, same image on the right, where you can see more of this MUTCD standard through right turn markings. Route 211, again, looking at from the Route 17 interchange to Goshen Turnpike. There are places along the corridor where there are no sidewalks. However, if you go out there, you could see what I would call kind of go paths, where you could see there are people walking. So there's a desire to have these sidewalks in place. Route 211 is a state road, so there's be some coordination between the state and the county. But even you can see highlighted in the picture, if you go out there today by the Route 17 ramps, there are you can see where people have walked, and we observe people walking along this area. That shows the desire for these facilities. Again, there's empty parcels along 211 that as those get developed, great opportunity to start providing sidewalks on the project site frontage. And similar to the Route 17 corridor, encouraging shared driveways for adjacent land uses. Along 211, we also looked at some of the intersections to see what we could improve. One of them was the 211 Galleria Drive intersection. Today, there's one left turn lane and 3 through lanes. And while not showing the image, those 3 through lanes eventually neck down to 2 lanes. And we also noticed there was a heavy left turn up onto Tower Drive. So one of the things we thought about was the concept of converting one of those through lanes to a trap left turn lane. So you'd have 2 left turn lanes, 2 through lanes, which will then match up where there's a neck down where the neck down occurs. But now you've created at least a pedestrian median to facilitate new pedestrian crossings that go from, there's some hotels, residential uses down to shopping and then transit. At Ballard Road and 211, a lot of this is both signal timing improvements and then new crosswalks, new sidewalks that we're trying to construct along the corridor. The function of in terms of the turn lanes remains the same, but again, adding these pedestrian amenities along the corridor and improving signal timings. And then at Goshen Turnpike, one of the problems we see out there is on the eastbound approach. Today, it's a shared lane. The left turn will typically block through and right turn traffic. And there's new developments coming online in this southwestern quadrant where we have opportunities to now widen the roadway to create that left turn pocket. New pedestrian facilities, sidewalks, crosswalks, ADA ramps. And then at this deli, there's a lot of vegetation we've noticed on this corner. And when vehicles were taking a red on red, it really inhibited their sight distance. So it'd be kind of making sure you have proper sight distance in all 4 corners, particularly at the deli. And again, sidewalks, crosswalks, and added capacity through its own left turn lane and a through right turn lane. Academy Avenue, again, going from Newsborough Boulevard all the way up to Main Street where the fire station is. At Newsborough Boulevard, we know there's the park and ride with plans to even expand the park and ride. We did notice that people were parking at the Lowe's and walking across the street with no facilities. And so just in general, upgrading these intersections to have the facilities that can either accommodate this travel back and forth between the Lowe's and people coming to the parking lots to the south, or again, helping out with the east-west sidewalks, standard ADA ramps, and crosswalks. As you go further on the corridor, between Route 78 and Main Street, you have about 1,200 feet where there is no crossing along Academy Avenue. So just actually go back a little bit from this stretch right here, you have crossings here and crosses at Main Street. And we notice people crossing mid-block where there are no crosswalks because the crossings are really too far away. So at that Christopher Road locations, kind of right in the middle, good sight distance, you could look at introducing the mid-block crossing with signage to help facilitate that crossing. A lot of times you use the rapid repeating flashing beacons, RFBs, to make sure it's a safe crossing from one side of the street to the other. As you get to Main Street today, this is a side street stop with north-south being free flow, but this is kind of like a centered area where there's a lot of people walking back and forth, and the building's actually built pretty close to the roadbed, so you have some limited sight distance. So in this case, we would propose to actually have an all-way stop, crosswalks on all 3 legs, and then you'll see that today there's parking on both sides of the roadway. As pedestrians cross today, they're actually hidden by some of the vehicles. So you could then actually create bulb outs where you lose a parking space, but allows pedestrians to come out into a better visual space for vehicular traffic to make sure safe crossings along all 3 legs. As you travel further up north on Main Street, again, there's another section where there's no crossings from Academy Avenue all the way up to where the fire station is. And again, you have parking on both sides of the street. You have a school, you have a church. So facilitating these mid-block crossings with cross markings and RFBs. And then once you get further by the fire station, very wide, very fast roadway because of this wide area you'll see as you come up north. You can have kind of a high-speed right. The crosswalk today is actually back here. So unsafe for pedestrians to cross. But again, you also have the fire station in this area. So what we propose would be really for striping, trying to direct traffic to have a slower right turn, better visibility for pedestrians as they cross Main Street, and then additional crosswalks on Oakland Avenue. But again, the big one with this one is restriping it to, again, not inhibit fire truck access, but really kind of slow down vehicles. And you could take this another step where you have multiple curbs too, but at least for the first low cost option, you can do it through striping. To go to some of our specific intersections, one is the 17M Brookside Avenue in Chester. Today, Lehigh Avenue comes in at this angle, you can almost see in the aerial, where you have this very funky high-speed right turn to left turn, short distance in between two intersections. We saw driver confusion of where to go. So in this case, what we would do is we would realign Lehigh Avenue to actually turn and connect into 17 further to the west. This is not private ownership. It's actually, you guys have the ownership right here where you can actually construct this. And now you've created two standard signals with opportunity for left turn lanes that now you don't have this really quick jog of northbound, taking a right and a quick left, with two T intersections that operate very well in this condition, two coordinated signals. And again, today, when there's a left turn, it's only one lane. Now you have the separated left turn with vehicles to go around to continue west. We also did notice that the bridge could use some repair. There's potholes, there's cracking. Kind of we talked about earlier, any infrastructure improvements or maintenance is really important to keep traffic flow consistent.
Did you guys look into roundabouts?
We didn't look at roundabout here because where this came in, it was still at an awkward angle where we couldn't get the roundabout to work. We did not look at roundabouts separately for these two. We do have trucks in this area, and so we couldn't keep the roundabouts tight. It'd have to be a pretty large roundabout with probably some truck aprons. So we avoided the roundabout and left them more as standard intersections, but just further apart. Again, heavy truck traffic in this area, really no pedestrians, but where these came in, it was kind of tough for us to get the roundabout to work with the trucks. And then Route 94 and Maple Avenue, this is actually, there's a plan already in place by State DOT to improve this intersection. That included crosswalks on all three locations, but today there's still this pork chop high-speed right. You can imagine, see where this green area is. There's a right turn that comes in front of the Historical Society building and continues, and there's only one lane for left and right turns. So under this, which you could build off of the state's improvement, and they were receptive to this, is creating more of a T intersection. So instead of the high-speed right turn that yields, it becomes more of a standard T intersection. You have opportunity for an open space in front of the Historical Center, but now you have shorter crosswalks, opportunity to provide more traffic capacity for left and right turners. So it just kind of continues to build off what State DOT is already planning. I know that was a lot very quick, but we want to go one other section. We can always return to these corridor improvements. And lastly, transit recommendations. There's two categories. One is the Middletown area. The recommendations really dealt with expanding to accommodate hybrid or flexible demand responsive service, but a lot of it really needs more post studies given what COVID-19 has done to travel patterns. So we need to understand how people's both work commute and mode share has changed, and really if what's there today for transit is competitive to driving. A lot of times what was noticed is there's a lot of short trips that would be desired through transit, but the way the transit system is set up, it takes multiple transfers and a longer route to create a shorter trip. So that's where the study was looking to push further studies along to say, how do we resolve that discrepancy? And then for intra-county transit, some of the recommendations included expanding the Wallkill Dial Ride operating hours. We noticed that Based on LBS data, people were traveling beyond the hours that were there today. So expanding those to 5:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then there's a lot of travel to the Garnet Health Medical Center, but there's a need to create the last mile between the medical center and transit to encourage transit use to get to this area. And then also making sure that for early and late night commuters or people needing to get to the hospital, those services are in place. So really the transit dealt with a lot of future studies, but the LBS data is showing that there are gaps in the service that should be looked at and can be done through future studies. And then lastly, in the report, you'll see a section on funding sources. There's a lot of funding that I think people are aware of that's been around for a while. ESD has funding sources. There's the TAP grants, Creating Healthy Schools Community grants. These are all projects that fit into these categories. And then there's some new ones coming out of the bipartisan infrastructure law. There's one that I think there's been a lot of talk about, which is the Safe Streets for All, which either helps you create action plans or implement action plans. But these are all funding sources that can really help towards either further studies or implementing these projects. And then you'll see in our report, we've tried to summarize all the recommendations and identify where some of these future grants could be applied for to help fund these initiatives. So I know I went through it relatively quickly just for time, but if there is any questions, I think we have 10 minutes left in the meeting, but I'll open up to the group for any questions they have or anything you guys want me to go back to.
Mike, thank you so much for that presentation. Again, I want to thank the Orange County Transportation Council, the Orange County planning staff for working with AKRF and the other consultants on this project. There's a lot of really good recommendations coming out of it. One of the things I'll just mention before we start with questions is we're already starting to implement some of the recommendations. Most importantly, we've initiated a Middletown bus network redesign effort, which is underway, and that was a recommendation coming out of this study. And one of the observations, like when I tell people this, they're like, the bus service currently stops around 5 p.m. So if you can imagine, if you're trying to get people to and from their residence to work or to services, that really doesn't cut it. So we want to build upon and expand that system, and that study's underway to move that forward. I'll turn it over to the council members. Any questions?
I have a couple comments. In thinking beyond this, did you think about are there opportunities to get to the Empire State Trail? I saw a couple of segments.
I believe, let's get to that map. Give me 1 second.
I mean, that might be a good long-term goal, something.
Yeah, I believe Trailway 6 would be the one that if you could extend further north, I think that was the closest one that would hit the Empire State Trail. We could go back and look. I think it's in our report, but I think this is the trail that would closely get you to there. Similarly, I should have mentioned 9 right here, gets you extremely close to the Appalachian Trail, which comes along here. And there's a small gap on Lot Road where the Appalachian Trail comes in, you can then tie into Unionville and then this trail right here. But I think for at least the Empire Trail, I believe it's Abandoned Railway 6 that would come the closest as you extend further north.
Okay, because that would be a real opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally does go. They did a lot of work on the Empire State Trail over in Putnam and Dutchess, so that it's all the way from New York City to Canada to Buffalo.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So if you guys can get your network to touch that, it really opens up.
I will say, we looked at that with the CMP, congestion management process between the 3 counties. So we do have a map that looks at the multimodal connections there. And we'll continue to work with our TMA partners on.
Yeah, try to
numerous
get a trail,
connections.
try to get a bike off-road trail system That would be huge. And then I think the recommendations in here, as far as they relate to the state highways, are excellent. I do think some of them are along, when you're talking about, some of the, maybe ones that are looking at congestion a little bit, left turn lanes and stuff. I'll want to take a look at those closer, but, the one for Route 94, what town does that go through predominantly?
Village of Chester.
Are they here or not? Because what I'm seeing there is, I don't know how interested the town of Chester is in TAP applications or pursuing these types of improvements. But this study and those drawings would really help with the TAP application. We've
Okay.
had, we did similar work for the village, or I think it's the town of Hyde Park. And really, my experience has been that a picture, is worth like 1,000 words
Yeah.
in these grant applications. And because you tied so much together on 94 in that village, that would be really strong. And then taking it one step further is this table is going to be probably distributing, soliciting for projects. And, there's some really, good suggestions in here.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how that's gonna line up with the funding that's made available, especially through all these other new programs that might be coming forward. But it's really nice. So when does is this draft right now or, okay?
Yes, it's draft. Our plan was to distribute it to the council for review and comments. And then we want to move forward with, finalizing it and having the Transportation Council adopt it.
Yeah, as soon as I can get a copy, the better. So that, we just have a planning process back in our office where we can go through and then make sure these recommendations are getting on the right people's radars, not that it means there's gonna be a project next year, but just so that they're aware they've been studied and there are recommendations. Okay, great.
Any other questions? If not, are there any other member reports?
Well, Middletown, the traffic operations, the project is moving along very well. And we're only gonna be delayed in paving, which is not a big deal. It's not really in the critical path of the project. And DOT, they came and they conducted their first audit last week, so everything seems to be in order. And it's moving along very well.
Very good. Any other reports? Mike, I just want to thank you once again.
No problem.
Good job. It's
All right. Everyone have a good day.
Thank
you as well.
Take care.
Hey, if there are no other comments or questions, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Aaron? Okay. Thank you. Mark, thank you.